I'll never forget the weight of that zipper. It was supposed to be nothing, just me reaching into my son's gray gym bag for a charger he said was in there. But when I pulled it open, my world cracked in half. Hoodies, crayons, little scraps of paper, things that looked like his daughter Ava had tossed in by accident. Then I saw the bricks wrapped in plastic, and the thick stacks of cash jammed against them. My throat closed, but the words slipped out before my brain could stop them. "Stop the car, right now!" I didn't shout. It came out raw, like my body knew we were already too close to a cliff's edge. Linda slammed the brakes, tires screeching on the I-10 shoulder. For a moment, all we heard was the rattle of the bag sliding forward between us, landing on the console like a bomb no one dared to touch. If you want to know just how far a family can fall when secrets explode like this, subscribe right now. Because trust me, what I found inside that bag was only the beginning. The heat outside pressed against the windows. Cars flew past, horns blaring. Inside, though, it was dead silent. Linda's hand was frozen on the wheel, her knuckles bone-white. I stared at the bag, the plastic-wrapped bricks stacked like a cruel puzzle. And the cash, God, the cash, bundled in rubber bands, thick as my fist. "Tell me this isn't his," Linda whispered, her voice breaking like glass. I couldn't answer. My heart was hammering, each beat screaming the truth I didn't want to say. Tyler wasn't just in trouble. He had dragged us into it, too. I reached out, but I didn't touch it, just hovered my hand over the bag, like if I actually laid a finger on it, the thing would detonate. My son's life, our lives, were tied up in that zipper, and I didn't even know how. It felt heavier than it should. More than fabric, more than contents. It was years of excuses, years of "just one more loan, Dad." Years of Linda and I covering rent, truck payments, daycare bills for Ava. Every bad decision he'd ever made seemed stuffed into that bag, pressing on my chest until I could barely breathe. Linda turned toward me, her eyes wide, terrified. "What if they're watching us?" she asked. The words chilled me, because I'd already thought the same thing. What if someone out there knew the bag was in our car? What if they were coming to collect? I wanted to tell her we should call the police. That would have been the sensible thing. But saying it out loud felt like betraying my own son. My hands shook on my lap, the weight of fatherhood and fear grinding against each other inside me. I forced myself to breathe, just once, slow, through my nose, out my mouth. But even that felt dangerous, like the air itself could turn against me. My eyes locked on the red zipper pull, dangling against the fabric. The way it clicked softly against the seatbelt buckle made my stomach twist. That tiny sound suddenly carried the weight of our entire family's future. Linda reached for my arm, nails digging into my sleeve. "Tell me what we do," she begged. I had no answer, only questions that tore me open from the inside. Was this Tyler's way of saying goodbye? I remembered his call earlier that day. His voice shaky, too soft. "Love you, Dad." It hadn't felt like love. It had felt like a warning. The interstate roared with strangers rushing to their own lives, oblivious that inside this one Subaru, a family was splitting at the seams. My chest burned with anger, shame, fear, and something worse. Hope that maybe it was all a mistake, that maybe it was something else inside those plastic bricks. But deep down, I knew. I thought of Ava's little hands, the way she clutched her stuffed bear at night. The thought of her smile, her trust, slammed into me harder than the traffic. How could Tyler do this, knowing she was watching? The bag sat there like an open wound. Every second it stayed in the car, it pulled us deeper into a darkness we didn't choose. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, holding my daughter-in-law's child in my arms, knowing one wrong move would send us all over. Linda's breathing turned sharp, panicked. "We have to throw it out," she said. "Now! On the side of the road." I almost agreed, but another thought hit me like ice water. If we tossed it, would someone come after us harder? Was it safer to keep it? Or was that exactly the trap? My palms were slick with sweat. I wiped them on my jeans, but it didn't help. The air in the car had turned thick, suffocating. I wanted to roll the window down, to scream into the passing traffic, but the sound lodged in my throat. My mind spun back to the night I told Tyler no. The last time he'd asked for money. I thought I was teaching him responsibility, setting boundaries. But now, seeing this, maybe all I did was push him further down a darker road. Linda pressed her forehead against the steering wheel, her body shaking. "This can't be real," she whispered. I wished I could tell her she was right. But the plastic-wrapped bricks didn't lie. I pulled the bag closer, just an inch, the fabric rasping against the leather seat. My heart dropped when I did. Something else was inside, something solid. I fumbled, opened one side pocket, and froze. It wasn't just cash. It wasn't just drugs. There was a gun. My vision blurred. My stomach lurched. I snapped the pocket closed so fast the zipper teeth caught on my skin. Blood welled up, sharp and stinging, but I barely felt it. All I saw was Linda's face, turning pale as death. I leaned back in the seat, heart pounding in my ears. My son hadn't just crossed a line. He'd erased it. And now the line was dragging us with him. Linda whispered, barely audible, "What if the police pull us over?" That was when my world tilted, when my fear became certainty. I lifted my eyes to the rearview mirror, and what I saw made the air leave my lungs. Tyler's truck, right behind us. The sight of his truck behind us made my blood turn cold. It wasn't a coincidence. Tyler wasn't just out here by chance. He was following us. My hand trembled against the door handle as I thought back to the call earlier that morning. His voice had been strange, too quiet, too final. "Love you, Dad," he'd said. Not the casual way he usually did. No, it had sounded like a farewell. I remember gripping the phone tighter when he said it, like I could squeeze the truth out of his words. I wanted to believe it was nothing, just my son showing affection. But deep down, I knew it wasn't affection. It was a goodbye, disguised as love. And now, with that gym bag between us and his truck in the mirror, the pieces snapped together. He had been preparing me, in his own broken way. It wasn't the first time Tyler had left me uneasy. For years, he leaned on us. Rent money, truck repairs, daycare fees for Ava. Every time I told myself it was just a rough patch, that he'd find his footing soon. But the rough patch never ended. The bills kept stacking, and my patience wore thin. I had said no the last time he begged, thinking it might force him to stand on his own. Instead, it looks like he'd chosen something far darker. "Do you remember last week?" I asked Linda, my voice low, as the truck drew closer in the mirror. "When he said he had everything under control?" She nodded slowly, tears welling up. We both knew Tyler only said that when he was drowning. It was his code, his way of hiding just how bad things had gotten. The memory cut me open. Just a week ago, he stood in our kitchen, eyes bloodshot, asking for just one more loan. He said it with that pleading smile, the one that always broke Linda first. I had drawn the line, told him enough was enough, told him if I gave more, he'd never stand on his own. At the time, I thought I was saving him. But now I wondered if that decision pushed him straight into the arms of people who gave him what I wouldn't. Linda's voice cracked as she whispered, "He's going to hurt us, isn't he?" I didn't answer, because the truth was already clawing at my chest. This wasn't about disappointment anymore. It wasn't about tough love. This was about survival. And our son was on the other side of the line. If you think parenting ends when your kids grow up, you're wrong. It only gets heavier. Subscribe right now, because what comes next shows just how much a parent can lose when love and fear collide. The truck swerved closer, headlights flashing. My palms were slick, heart hammering against my ribs. "Stop," I muttered to Linda. "Not yet," but she gripped the wheel tighter, panic written across her face. The air in the car was heavy, like even the engine knew something terrible was closing in. I closed my eyes for a second, and I was back in the moment Ava was born. Tyler had called me from the hospital, his voice trembling, but proud. "She's perfect, Dad." I remembered crying that night, thinking my son had finally found a reason to fight for something bigger than himself. And yet, here we were, years later, with a bag of poison between us and his truck hunting us down. I tried to piece together when it all shifted. Was it when his job at the warehouse ended? When his wife left him? Or was it earlier, when I kept covering his mistakes instead of letting him fall? Each memory stabbed deeper, and none of them gave me an answer. Only more regret. Linda's breathing quickened, shallow and ragged. "He's flashing his lights," she whispered. "He wants us to stop." Her hands trembled against the wheel, nails digging into the leather. I shook my head, fear gripping me harder than any seatbelt. "Not here. Not on the highway. Keep driving." But I knew Tyler. He wasn't the boy I raised anymore. If he wanted that bag back, he'd find a way to force it. My gut twisted at the thought. Was I staring at my son? Or at the man who might kill me to keep his secrets? The phone buzzed in my pocket. I jumped, fumbling to pull it out. His name glowed on the screen. Tyler. My thumb hovered, every part of me screaming not to answer, but my father's heart caved. I pressed the green button and lifted it to my ear. His voice came sharp, panicked, shaking with rage. "Dad, don't do this to me. Please, just give me the bag. You don't know what's inside. You don't know what they'll do if I don't have it." His words twisted around me, thick with desperation. Not just fear of losing the bag, but fear of something worse. "They?" I whispered, my throat tightening. But he didn't answer the question. He only kept begging. "Pull over, right now, before it's too late." Linda's eyes darted to mine, wide, searching. The steering wheel shook under her grip as the truck closed the distance behind us. For a second, my mind cracked open to a cruel possibility. What if the bag wasn't even his? What if he was just a pawn? What if we were the ones being used as bait, as shields? My stomach knotted tighter, bile rising in my throat. "Tyler, listen to me," I said, my voice trembling between anger and fear. "This isn't just about you anymore. It's about Ava. It's about what you've dragged us into." On the other end, silence. Heavy, broken silence. Until finally, he whispered, "I didn't mean for you to find it." The words were softer than I expected, but they sliced through me all the same. My son hadn't stumbled into this. He had hidden it. He had placed it in our car, knowing we might drive with it, knowing we might carry his burden without ever realizing. And that broke something inside me I didn't know could break. Linda let out a sob, pressing her hand against her mouth. The headlights behind us glared brighter. Tyler's truck inching closer, the rumble of his engine like a predator stalking prey. The phone shook in my hand, his voice growing harsher. "If you don't stop this car, Dad, I swear—" I cut him off, my voice raw. "Swear what?" The silence that followed was worse than any threat, because silence meant he was willing. Silence meant he'd already thought it through. The road stretched ahead, endless and merciless. My son's truck pressed closer in the rear view, my wife's sobs echoing beside me. The gym bag still crouched between us like a viper ready to strike. My pulse thundered as I clutched the phone tighter, desperate for something human in his voice. But all I heard was hunger. That's when the truck's horn blared, loud and violent, making Linda jerk the wheel. My body slammed against the door, the bag shifting forward again. The horn didn't stop. It screamed at us, demanding obedience, demanding surrender. And then I realized he wasn't going to wait for us to stop. He was going to force us. Because Tyler swerved, his truck pulling sharply ahead, blocking the road, brake lights blinding us in red. Linda gasped, her foot slamming down. And all I could think was, this was no longer about a bag. It was about survival. When the car screeched to a halt, his shadow stepped out. He slammed his fist against our window, face twisted in desperation and rage. His voice ripped through the glass, shaking me to my core. "Give it back, Dad. Don't ruin this for me." His fist rattled the glass so hard the whole car shook. Linda gasped, her fingers clawing the steering wheel as if it were the only thing keeping her tethered to this world. Tyler's eyes were wild, bloodshot, desperate. My son was standing inches away, yet I felt like I didn't recognize him at all. He wasn't pleading anymore. He was demanding. The bag lay heavy between us, its zipper gleaming under the dashboard lights. I couldn't look away. That bag wasn't just fabric and seams. It was years of lies, years of guilt. Every time we said yes to him when we should have said no, every loan, every favor, it was all stuffed inside that gray shell. And now it sat there, dividing us like a wall. Linda's knuckles were bone white on the wheel, her body trembling as Tyler slammed again. "Open the door, Mom!" he shouted, spit hitting the glass. She flinched, her lips pressing tight together. Tears streaked her face, but her grip never loosened. For the first time I realized she wasn't going to move. She wasn't going to break. "Call the police," I muttered, my voice so low it nearly drowned in the roar of passing trucks. I grabbed for my phone, my fingers slippery with sweat. The weight of that decision hit me harder than anything before. I wasn't just calling for help. I was calling to turn my son in. When the dispatcher answered, my words shook. "My son, he's threatening us on the side of I-10. He wants something in our car. Please, send someone." I never thought I'd say those words. Never thought I'd describe Tyler as a threat. But the reflection of his face in the glass told me he already was. Tyler pounded again, his palm flat now, his voice cracking. "You don't understand. If I don't get it back, they'll kill me." His words carved into me like knives. Part of me wanted to believe him. Part of me wanted to open the door, hand him the bag, and pray it would all go away. But another part, the father who had been bled dry, knew this wasn't just fear. It was manipulation. One more desperate play in a long line of them. "Tyler, stop!" I shouted through the glass, my voice raw. "This isn't about saving you anymore. This is about saving Ava. Don't you see what you've done?" His eyes flickered at her name, just for a second, and then his jaw tightened, rage overtaking the hesitation. He slammed again, harder. Linda whispered, "He's not hearing you." Her hands trembled, but her voice carried steel I hadn't heard before. "He doesn't care about what happens to us." The words hit me like a hammer, because she was right. For the first time, I had to admit it. Our son wasn't fighting for family. He was fighting for himself. The bag shifted as I shoved it down against the console, its zipper teeth biting into my palm. "This isn't just about money anymore," I said, more to myself than to him. My voice cracked with the truth. "It's Ava's future. That's all that matters now." Linda's eyes darted toward me, filling with tears, but she nodded. A truck blasted its horn as it tore past, the force shaking our car. The sound jolted me back into the moment, into the nightmare unfolding around us. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the phone. "Units are on the way. Stay in the car. Do not engage." Her words steadied me for half a breath, but Tyler's fists kept coming, louder, angrier, drowning out reason. "Dad, open this door right now!" he roared, his voice breaking like a whip. "If you don't, you'll regret it. I swear to God." His shadow loomed larger in the glass, his body pressed close. I wanted to scream back, to remind him who I was, but the boy I raised wasn't standing there anymore. This was someone else. Linda turned toward me, eyes wide, searching for an answer. Her breath came fast, uneven, each inhale like a sob. "What if he smashes the window?" she whispered. My gaze dropped to the bag again, and I felt the same thought crawling through me. If he broke through, if he grabbed it, what would we do? The phone buzzed in my ear, static from the dispatcher. "Stay calm. Help is close." But calm was impossible. My son's voice outside wasn't calm. It was wild, unhinged. It was the voice of a man cornered, a man who thought his only escape was through us. I pressed my hand over the bag like I could shield it, like I could shield Ava's life from collapsing. The fabric was hot, damp with sweat from my own palm. It was no longer just an object. It was a curse, binding us to Tyler's choices, tying us to the storm he had unleashed. Tyler's fist stilled for a moment. He leaned closer, forehead pressed against the glass. His breath fogged the window as his eyes met mine. "Dad, please," he whispered, softer now, broken. "Don't make me lose everything." His voice cracked, the boy I once knew bleeding through for a second. But I didn't move. The sound of sirens began faint in the distance, low and ghostly against the roar of the highway. My chest tightened. Relief should have come, but instead, dread spread through me like fire, because Tyler heard it too. His head whipped around, his body stiffening as the wail grew louder. Linda's grip on the wheel tightened again, her lips trembling. "They're coming," she whispered. But the way she said it, I knew she wasn't sure if it meant salvation or destruction. Tyler backed away from the glass, his hands twitching at his sides. His eyes darted to the road, then back to us. Panic carved across his face, twisting his features into something desperate and dangerous. "Don't let them take me!" he shouted, louder now, his voice cracking with terror. "Don't let them take me, Dad!" The sirens grew sharper, closer, flashing lights painting streaks across the night sky. I looked at Linda. Her eyes were soaked in tears, but behind them, I saw resolve. She nodded at me once, firmly, and in that moment, I knew. We were no longer choosing for Tyler. We were choosing for Ava. The roar of engines grew. Blue and red lights sliced through the dark, bouncing off the glass, flooding the car in harsh color. Tyler's body stiffened, frozen between running and fighting. The bag sat between us, humming with danger. The sirens screamed louder, closer, swallowing his shouts, filling every corner of the car. My chest throbbed, my breath caught, and then, through the rearview mirror, I saw the first cruiser crest the ramp, lights blazing, tires shrieking. The sirens had arrived. The sirens split the night wide open, a piercing cry that cut through bone and breath. Tyler spun around, his fists still at his sides, eyes darting like a trapped animal. He pounded the glass one last time, face twisted in desperation. "Give it back, Dad! Don't ruin this for me!" His voice cracked, but the rage behind it was sharp enough to draw blood. Linda jolted, her hand shooting for the door locks. The heavy thunk of the mechanism filled the car, sealing us in like a coffin. Her chest rose and fell in shallow bursts, eyes locked on our son outside the glass. "He's out of control," she whispered, her voice trembling like brittle glass ready to shatter. "He doesn't care what happens to us." I clutched the phone tighter, the dispatcher's voice a faint buzz against the thunder of my heart. "Stay in the car. Do not engage." The words felt both like a command and a prayer. My son's shadow loomed over us, but inside, all I could feel was the crushing weight of the bag, heavier than any secret we'd ever carried. Tyler slammed his palm flat against the glass again, his breath steaming it. His face was red, contorted, veins bulging along his neck. "You don't understand what's in there," he screamed, spittle spraying the window. "If I don't get it back, it's over for me." His eyes locked onto mine, wild, pleading, furious, all at once. A partial truth slipped through the cracks. It wasn't just money. It wasn't just drugs. There was something else inside that bag. Something bigger, darker. I swallowed hard, my mouth dry as dust. "Who gave it to you?" I shouted back, the words tearing out of me. He flinched, but said nothing. His silence told me everything. Whoever they were more terrifying than the cops bearing down on us. The roar of engines grew closer. Flashing blue and red washed across his face, cutting shadows into his skin. Tyler's body tensed, his feet shifting toward his truck, then back toward our window. Torn between escape and confrontation, he looked like a man being pulled in two directions, neither offering mercy. Linda gripped the steering wheel tighter, her nails digging into the leather. "Don't roll it down," she muttered through clenched teeth. She was shaking, yet her resolve was stronger than I'd ever seen. For the first time I realized she wasn't just afraid. She was furious. Years of lies, years of manipulation had carved something unbreakable in her. "Dad!" Tyler hissed, his voice dropping to a jagged whisper. His forehead pressed against the glass, fogging it with every word. "You don't know who you're messing with. If you let them take it, it won't just be me who pays." My heart froze. The threat wasn't about him anymore. It was about us, about Ava. The first cruiser skidded to the shoulder, tires screeching as its lights strobed across the asphalt. Another followed close behind, sirens cutting out, replaced by the sharp crackle of radios and the slam of car doors. "Step away from the vehicle!" an officer shouted, voice booming through the night. Tyler's head jerked toward them, his body coiled like a spring. He turned back to me, his face twisted, and for a split second, I saw my little boy again, the one who used to run barefoot through the yard, his laughter echoing like bells. That boy was gone. In his place stood a man consumed, eaten alive by choices he couldn't undo. "Please," he mouthed through the glass, the words silent but searing. Linda's tears spilled freely now, streaking her cheeks. She whispered under her breath, "It's Ava's future, not his." Her words stabbed through me. I nodded, my hand trembling over the phone. Every instinct screamed to protect my son. But deeper still, another voice shouted louder. Protect the child who still had a chance. Two officers approached cautiously, guns drawn low, flashlights cutting across the scene. Tyler's truck roared to life behind him, headlights blazing. He spun around, hands half raised, shouting at the cops. It's not what you think. I just need what's mine. His voice cracked against the night, wild and frantic. Step away from the car, the officer ordered again, his flashlight steady on Tyler's chest. The beam lit up every drop of sweat, every twitch in his shaking hands. He took one step back, then two forward, torn between surrender and defiance. The dispatcher's voice buzzed against my ear again. Stay calm. Stay inside. But calm was a foreign word now. Every second stretched into eternity. My chest burned, my throat dry, as the bag seemed to hum in the silence between shouts. Dad! Tyler screamed again, whipping his head back toward me. His hand slammed against the glass, the impact rattling through my bones. They'll kill me if I lose it. Do you hear me? They'll kill me! His voice cracked, desperation stripping it raw. For a second, I almost believed him. Almost. The officers edged closer, one circling wide. The tension thickened until the air felt unbreathable. My grip tightened around the phone, sweat dripping down my temple. The weight of a father's choice pressed harder than any law. Save my son, or save everyone else from what he'd become. The cruiser lights flashed in relentless rhythm, painting Tyler in alternating blue and red. He looked trapped in a cage of color, every angle of him exposed. He raised his hands higher, but his eyes flicked back to the bag, burning into it like fire. Linda's hand found mine, her fingers icy cold. She didn't need to speak. Her look said everything. We couldn't give it back. Not this time. Not at this cost. My throat clenched as I whispered, I'm sorry, son. Tyler's body jerked as if the words had struck him. He slammed both fists on the glass, harder than ever before, a guttural cry tearing from his throat. The officers shouted, guns raised now, voices sharp and commanding. The world blurred around me. All I could see was my son, my blood, caught between surrender and destruction. His shadow loomed over us, shaking, trembling, eyes wild with betrayal. And then, just as the officers moved in, the night split apart with the deafening screech of more sirens, louder, closer, surrounding us in every direction. Red and blue lights swallowed the highway. Tires screamed, radios crackled, doors slammed. And in that chaos, Tyler made his move. The moment Tyler lunged, everything shattered at once. He bolted toward his truck, arms flailing, voice torn between a scream and a sob. The cops shouted louder, commands crashing over each other. Stop! Get on the ground! Their words cut through the night like blades, but Tyler didn't listen. He ran, as if speed alone could save him from the storm he had built. Linda screamed his name, the sound raw, breaking from somewhere deep. Her fingers dug into my arm, nails sharp, body trembling as if she could anchor him with her voice. But nothing could reach him now. He was too far gone, swallowed by fear, pride, and desperation. The bag sat heavy between us, its zipper catching the strobe of lights. I stared at it as officers sprinted after him, weapons raised, flashlights bouncing across the asphalt. The sight made my chest split wide open. My son wasn't just being hunted for what he'd done. He was being hunted for what he carried inside that cursed fabric. Get down! Hands behind your back! The command roared again. Tyler froze for half a heartbeat, his arms halfway raised, his body stiff and shaking. Hope flickered in my chest. Maybe he would surrender. Maybe he would finally understand it was over. Then he turned back to us, his face lit in alternating red and blue, mouth twisted in a cry. It was just a favor, he shouted. His words cracked, flung like knives into the air. You don't understand. He stumbled forward, nearly tripping, hands still twitching between surrender and fight. That was the moment the officers rushed him. They pinned him hard against the side of his truck, his voice muffled by the metal, arms wrenched behind his back. The sound of handcuffs snapping shut echoed like a verdict. Linda buried her face into her hands, sobbing, her whole body shaking against me. I wanted to close my eyes, to shut it out, but I couldn't. I had to watch. I had to see the boy I raised dragged away in chains, screaming for mercy, begging for understanding that I couldn't give him any more. The image seared into me, permanent, cruel. One officer yanked the gym bag from the car, holding it up like a trophy, sealed in evidence tape. The zipper clinked, the fabric sagged heavy. All of Tyler's choices bundled into one damning object. My throat closed as I realized it wasn't just evidence. It was the anchor pulling him under. "Sir, step out of the vehicle," another officer commanded, flashlight in my eyes. I obeyed without thinking, my knees weak, the ground spinning beneath me. Linda stayed frozen in the driver's seat, gripping the wheel as if it could stop the world from collapsing. The night smelled of oil, rubber, and sweat. Radios crackled. Orders barked. Tyler's voice rose above them all, hoarse and broken. "Dad, tell them. Tell them I didn't mean to. It's not mine." His words sliced through the chaos, reaching me like jagged glass. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. What was there to say? I thought of Ava, asleep in her bed, unaware her father was on the ground with knees pressed into his back. I thought of the promises he made when she was born, how he swore he'd give her the life he never had. And now, all I saw was a man who couldn't even keep himself free. The officers hauled him upright, his wrists cuffed, his chest heaving. His face was red, streaked with sweat and fury. His eyes locked on mine, burning with betrayal. "You let them take me," he spat, his words shaking me harder than any blow could. I felt my knees buckle under the weight of his hatred. Linda finally unlatched her seatbelt, stumbling out into the chaos. Her sobs ripped through the night, desperate and broken. She reached toward him, but an officer held her back, his hand firm but not unkind. "Ma'am, he's in custody. Please stand back." Her cries only grew louder, each one a dagger. For a moment, the world stilled. Tyler sagged against the hood of the cruiser, his head bowed. The bag disappeared into the trunk of another squad car, swallowed by steel. And with it went every chance he had left. My chest burned, my eyes stung, but I didn't cry. I felt hollow, scraped out, as if grief had drained me dry. The highway roared again, cars rushing past, strangers glancing at the spectacle without slowing down. To them, it was just another arrest. To me, it was my son's soul in chains. One officer came over, voice calm but firm. "Sir, we'll need you to give a statement. We'll also need you to think about custody arrangements for the child." His words sliced through the fog. Custody. Ava. The world tilted as I realized what was coming next. Linda froze, her hands falling from her face. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "Not Ava. Please. Not her too." But deep down, we both knew what was inevitable. With Tyler gone, someone would have to decide where Ava belonged. And the state never waited long. They loaded Tyler into the cruiser, his shouts muffled now, swallowed by steel and glass. His forehead pressed against the window, his eyes locked on me one last time. The look wasn't just anger. It was a plea, a silent scream for me to undo everything, to save him one more time. But I couldn't. The door slammed shut. The sound echoed through me like a coffin lid. Linda collapsed against my chest, sobbing harder, her tears soaking through my shirt. I held her, but my arms felt useless, empty. I couldn't protect her. I couldn't protect him. And maybe I couldn't protect Ava either. The officers pulled away, their lights fading into the dark, leaving silence in their wake. The highway swallowed the night again, but nothing was the same. My ears rang with the ghost of sirens, my chest crushed under the weight of what had just happened. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit something, anything, to release the fire inside. But I stood frozen on the shoulder, staring at the empty space where my son had been, staring at the shadows where our lives had cracked open. Linda's voice was small, broken, but clear. "What happens to Ava now?" Her question dropped into the silence like a stone, rippling through me. I had no answer. My throat burned, my heart hollow. But before I could speak, a car door shut behind us. I turned, and standing there was a woman with a clipboard, her face grim, her badge catching the light. She stepped forward slowly, her tone careful but cold. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter," she said, "I'm with Child Protective Services. We need to talk about Ava." Her words struck harder than the arrest, because in that moment, I realized losing Tyler was only the beginning. And that night, with the echoes of sirens still fading, a social worker knocked on our door. The knock echoed through the house like a verdict. Linda froze mid-step, her hand clutching the back of a chair as if bracing for an earthquake. I opened the door, and there she stood, the same woman from the roadside, clipboard in hand, her eyes steady but not unkind. "We need to discuss Ava's placement," she said softly. The words felt like a blade pressed against my chest. Linda's sobs broke out before the woman even stepped inside. She collapsed into a chair at the kitchen table, burying her face in her hands. I tried to stay upright, tried to look strong, but my knees trembled. "She's just a child," I muttered, my voice cracking. "She doesn't deserve this." The woman nodded, jotting notes, her pen scratching like thunder in the quiet. We led her to the living room, where Ava's toys still lay scattered on the rug. Tiny dolls, crayons, a stuffed bear missing one button eye. The sight nearly crushed me. Innocence spread across the floor, untouched by the chaos consuming her parents. How could she lose everything without even knowing it yet? The woman explained procedures in calm tones: temporary custody, home evaluations, paperwork. Her words sounded like static, my brain refusing to process them. All I saw was Ava's little face the last time she'd run through this room, her laughter echoing in the walls. How could I let them take that from her? Linda finally lifted her head, tears streaking her face. "She stays here," she said firmly, her voice shaking but certain. "She has a bed here. She has love here. You can't take her away from us." The woman hesitated, then nodded slightly. "That's the goal," she admitted. "But it depends on the court. For now, she'll remain with you." Relief swept through the room like air after drowning. Later that night, we carried Ava's things upstairs. Linda set her stuffed bear on the pillow of the guest room bed, smoothing the quilt with trembling hands. "It's not perfect," she whispered, "but it's hers now." I watched her tuck the toy in, as if Ava were already asleep there, and the weight in my chest grew heavier. When Ava finally arrived, small, tired, her eyes wide from too many questions, she clutched that bear to her chest like armor. Linda knelt down, pulling her into her arms. "You're safe here, sweetheart," she murmured. The girl nodded, but her voice was barely a breath. "Are Mommy and Daddy gone forever?" The words ripped me apart. I wanted to tell her no. I wanted to promise her everything would be okay, but promises had already betrayed her too many times. So I swallowed hard and said the only thing I could. "No matter what happens, you'll never be alone." She buried her face into Linda's shoulder, and my heart cracked open. At the kitchen table, the paperwork sprawled out like a battlefield. Signatures, dates, official stamps. Each line stole something from us, binding us to a reality we hadn't chosen. Linda signed with trembling hands, while I pressed the pen so hard it nearly tore the paper. With every stroke, it felt like I was signing away pieces of Tyler, too. The house was quiet after the social worker left, but not peaceful. It was the silence of absence, of everything unsaid. Linda sat by Ava's new bed until the girl's eyes fluttered shut, her tiny hand clutching the bear. I stood in the doorway, watching, afraid to breathe too loud. Downstairs, I poured myself a glass of water, but it tasted bitter, metallic. My reflection in the window looked like a stranger, older, broken, ashamed. I whispered to the empty room, "How did we get here, son?" The words fogged against the glass before vanishing. Just like Tyler's promises, if you've ever had to choose between protecting your child and saving your grandchild, you know the weight of this. Comment below. What would you do in my place? Would you forgive, or would you fight back? I walked back upstairs and found Linda asleep in the chair beside Ava's bed, her body slumped, her hand still resting on the quilt. For the first time, I saw her not just as my wife, but as a soldier, worn, wounded, but unwilling to surrender. The room smelled faintly of baby powder and tears. Ava stirred in her sleep, whispering something I couldn't catch. I stepped closer. my chest tightening. She breathed one word into the dark. Daddy. It broke me. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at her tiny fingers curled around the bear. My heart burned with rage at Tyler, with grief for him, with love for her. All tangled, all unbearable. I wanted to scream. Instead, I stayed still. The house groaned in the night, settling on its foundation, but every sound felt like a threat. My ears strained, waiting for footsteps that never came, for knocks that weren't there. The storm inside me wouldn't calm. I thought back to the bag, the gun, the cash, the bricks. None of it belonged in our world. Yet here it was, its poison seeping into every corner of our lives. Ava was sleeping just a few feet from where it all could have ended. Linda stirred, waking slowly, her eyes swollen. "We have to be strong," she whispered. Her voice was raspy, but steady. "For her." I nodded, though strength felt like a distant memory. All I had left was the determination not to let Ava drown in the wreckage. The night dragged on, minutes stretching like hours. Every time Ava shifted, I jolted awake, afraid she might vanish too. By dawn, my body was heavy with exhaustion, but my mind still throbbed with questions I couldn't answer. When sunlight finally crept into the room, Ava blinked awake, clutching her bear tighter. She looked at me with eyes too old for her age. "Grandpa," she whispered, "can I stay here forever?" I forced a smile, though my throat burned. "As long as you need," I said. But the truth clawed at me. We weren't the ones who truly decided. The court would. The state would. And Tyler's choices would keep haunting her. Linda kissed Ava's forehead, her voice warm despite the cracks. "We'll take care of you, baby." Ava nodded, but her eyes lingered on the window, as if waiting for someone else to appear. I turned away, unable to bear it. My hands trembled as I reached for the phone, scrolling through Tyler's missed calls. My finger hovered over the voicemail tab. My chest tightened. Did I even want to hear what he'd left behind? Before I could decide, the doorbell rang. My stomach dropped. Linda shot me a glance, fear flashing in her eyes. Slowly, I walked to the front door and opened it. Two detectives stood on the porch, their expressions heavy, their badges catching the morning light. One of them held a plastic evidence bag. Inside, it was a phone. "Mr. Carter," the taller one said, "we need to show you something." And when I saw the cracked screen light up with Tyler's name across the messages, I knew. Our nightmare had only just begun. The phone sat on the table between us, glowing like a guilty lantern in the dark. The detective slid it closer, his latex gloves squeaking against the plastic evidence bag. My chest tightened as the screen flickered, message after message lighting up. Tyler's name at the top, his words spilling across the display like poison. Linda leaned forward, her hand hovering over her mouth. Her eyes moved fast, tracing each line, her breath catching at every word. I forced myself to look, forced myself to see the truth I'd been avoiding. The texts weren't just about him. They were about us, about how he'd planned to use us. "They'll never check your parents' car," one message read. "They're clean. Cops won't suspect a thing." Another followed. "Make sure they drive it through. They won't ask questions." My vision blurred, the letters swimming. Tyler hadn't just made a mistake. He had made us the mistake. Linda gasped, shaking her head violently. "No, he wouldn't. Not us. Not his own parents." Her voice cracked, the words barely holding together. But the evidence glared back, undeniable. He had chosen us as his cover, the people who loved him most. My throat closed as I remembered his shaky phone call, his "Love you, Dad." It hadn't been affection. It had been a setup, a way to soften me, to make me trust. My own son had looked me in the eye and handed me a bomb, expecting me to carry it without question. The detective's voice cut through the silence. "Mr. Carter, this isn't uncommon. Family's the easiest way to smuggle. People trust you. They don't check you." He spoke matter-of-factly, but every word was a hammer against my ribs. Linda slammed her fist onto the table, the sound sharp and final. "We gave him everything," she cried, tears flying from her cheeks. "We kept him alive when he should have been on the street. And this is what he does?" Her voice broke, echoing through the kitchen like a wound that wouldn't close. I wanted to defend him. I wanted to say it was all a misunderstanding, that someone else had used his phone. But the dates, the times, they matched. Each message lined up with every excuse, every lie, every call he'd made to us. The betrayal was total. The phone buzzed in the evidence bag, vibrating against the wood. A new message appeared from an unknown number. "Where is it?" He said. "You had it." My stomach turned to ice. They weren't just after Tyler. They knew us. They knew where it had been. The detective snatched the phone, muttering into his radio, his face grim. Linda clutched my arm, her nails digging in deep. "We're not safe," she whispered. Her voice trembled, but her words were stone. "If they don't have Tyler, they'll come for us." I looked at Ava sleeping on the couch, her stuffed bear tucked under her arm, her tiny chest rising and falling. The sight stabbed through me. She was the only innocent in this whole mess, and yet she was the most vulnerable. My heart throbbed with rage at Tyler. How could he risk her like this? The detective turned back to us, his expression heavy. "We'll put a patrol car outside tonight, but you need to understand, these people don't stop easy." His warning slithered into my bones, leaving me cold. Linda wiped her tears, her face hardening. "He didn't just betray us," she said, her voice low. "He betrayed her." Her eyes flicked to Ava. The pain in her words was sharper than any blade. The room felt smaller, suffocating. The phone's glow lingered in my vision like a curse. I thought back to every time Tyler had said, "Trust me." Every time he'd leaned on our love to cover his recklessness. I realized now he'd been training us for this moment all along. "Do you see?" Linda asked me, her voice trembling but fierce. "He never wanted our help. He wanted our shield. We were never parents to him anymore. We were pawns." The truth settled like lead in my stomach. She was right. The detective gathered the phone, sealing it tight in the bag. "We'll need more from you tomorrow," he said. His words blurred as my eyes fixed on Ava again. She shifted in her sleep, whispering something soft, unaware her world was hanging by a thread. "If you've ever been betrayed by the person you'd die for, you know this feeling. Tell me, would you forgive, or would you cut them off forever? Comment below." When the detectives left, the house plunged back into silence. Linda slumped at the table, her body trembling, her face pale. I stood frozen, staring at the dark window, waiting for headlights that hadn't arrived yet. My mind raced with shadows. The betrayal cut deeper than the arrest. Prison, handcuffs. I could live with those. But knowing my son had chosen me as his shield, had dragged his own daughter into his darkness. That wound would never heal. I walked upstairs, checking every lock, every window, my heart thudding with each step. I felt like prey in my own home. Linda followed, her hands trembling, her eyes hollow. When I returned to the kitchen, the evidence bag still lay there, faint fingerprints smudged across the plastic. The phone inside had gone dark, but its silence wasn't comforting. It was waiting. I sat down across from it, burying my head in my hands. My chest burned with anger, my stomach knotted with grief. The truth was clear now. Tyler's bag had never been meant for him. It had been meant for us. And as that realization settled like poison, I felt the weight of footsteps approaching outside. The wooden gavel cracked like thunder, and suddenly all eyes turned toward my son. Tyler stood at the defense table, shackles at his ankles, his orange jumpsuit swallowing the boy I once knew. My chest ached, my throat dry as dust. The courtroom smelled faintly of paper and old wood polish, but beneath it lingered sweat and fear. My son's sweat, my fear. Linda sat stiff beside me, her hands clasped so tight her knuckles looked carved from stone. Ava wasn't here, thank God, but her absence was another wound, a reminder of what was at stake. Tyler's lawyer whispered in his ear, and my son nodded slowly, his shoulders hunched, his eyes darting anywhere but toward us. The judge cleared her throat, her voice steady but cold. "Mr. Carter, you've been offered drug court instead of prison. This is an opportunity, but it comes with conditions." Her words hung in the air like a lifeline dangling over a cliff. I leaned forward, desperate for Tyler to grab it. He finally looked at us. His eyes were red, rimmed with sleepless nights, but for a second, I saw the boy who once begged me to teach him to ride a bike, who once brought me crayon drawings of our family. My heart broke all over again. Tyler's lips parted, and his voice came low, rough, broken. I chose fast money over Ava, he admitted, his words echoing in the still courtroom. That ends now. The room went quiet, the air thick, as if the walls themselves leaned in closer. Linda gasped softly, her hand pressing to her mouth. For a brief moment, hope flickered in me. Maybe he finally understood. Maybe, after all of this, he was ready to take responsibility. But then the whispers began. People in the gallery leaned to each other, muttering, "He's lying. He's saying what they want to hear." Their words wormed into my ear, gnawing at the fragile hope inside me. The prosecutor rose, voice sharp as glass. "Mr. Carter, you speak of your child, but the evidence shows you placed her in danger. You placed your parents in danger. Why should the court believe this sudden change of heart?" Tyler flinched, his gaze dropping to the table. My hands clenched, rage boiling, rage at the prosecutor, rage at Tyler, rage at myself. Linda whispered beside me, "He means it. He has to mean it." But her tone betrayed her. She was trying to convince herself more than anyone else. I wanted to believe her, but the betrayal from his phone still burned too fresh. The judge leaned forward, her gavel tapping once, sharp and final. "Your plea will be accepted," she said. Relief crashed through me like water, but it was shallow, fragile, because her next words carried a shadow. "Your future depends on what you do next, and this court will be watching closely." Tyler nodded, his jaw tight, his eyes flicking toward us again. He mouthed something. "I'm sorry." Linda squeezed my hand hard, tears spilling, but I sat frozen, my heart a stone. How many times had he said those words before? How many times had he asked for forgiveness, only to betray it? The courtroom buzzed with movement as papers shuffled, chairs scraped, voices rose, but all I heard was the pounding of my heart. I kept seeing Ava's face, her small hands clutching that stuffed bear. Did she know her father was standing here, admitting to choosing money over her? Did she feel the weight of his choices, even in her sleep? As we rose to leave, Tyler suddenly spoke again, louder this time. "Dad." His voice cracked, sharp enough to slice through the noise. Everyone froze. My body stiffened. My breath caught. Slowly, I turned back to face him. His eyes were wet, glimmering under the harsh lights. For the first time in years, he looked stripped bare, vulnerable. "I don't deserve it," he said, his voice trembling. "But if you'll let me, I'll fix this. For Ava, for all of you." The words hit me like a hammer. My knees went weak. Part of me wanted to rush forward, to hold him, to tell him he could start again. But another part, wounded, raw, knew how many times I'd heard variations of the same promise. The bailiff tugged his arm, leading him back toward the holding area. Tyler kept his eyes on me until the last second, his lips trembling, his face pale. Linda sobbed quietly beside me, whispering, "He's changing. He has to." We stepped into the hallway, the cold air slamming into us. People murmured around us, shaking their heads, their whispers like poison. "He'll never change. He's just buying time." Their doubt sank into my skin, heavy as lead. I pressed my hand against the wall, the smooth paint cool against my burning palm. My mind was a war. Love against betrayal. Hope against rage. I wanted to believe him, but belief was dangerous. Belief was what had brought us here. Linda touched my arm gently. "Did you hear him?" she asked, her eyes shining. "Did you hear what he said about Ava?" I nodded slowly, but words wouldn't come. Because deep inside, I knew what she didn't want to admit. A promise means nothing until it's tested. The hallway buzzed with footsteps, doors creaking, papers shuffling. But to me, everything was silent. Just me, Linda, and the echo of Tyler's words. "I'll fix this." A vow, a plea, or another manipulation. I couldn't tell. If you've ever been caught between hope and doubt, you know the torment. Tell me, would you trust him again? Or would you close the door for good? As we walked toward the exit, the image of him shackled burned into my vision. The same boy I once carried on my shoulders now dragged chains across a courtroom floor. The irony twisted my insides, cruel and relentless. Outside, the sunlight hit us, too bright, too harsh. Linda shielded her eyes, but I didn't move. My gaze stayed fixed on the courthouse doors, waiting, straining, as if Tyler might walk out behind us a different man. And then, just as I turned away, I heard his voice echo faintly from the hall inside. His next words carried out through the air, reaching me before the door swung shut. Words that broke me more than the handcuffs ever did. I froze when I heard his voice carry through the hallway. It wasn't loud, but it struck me like a hammer. "Keep Ava until I'm clean," Tyler said. My breath caught. For the first time, he wasn't begging for money, for forgiveness, for escape. He was asking for distance. And that, somehow, hurt the most. Linda gripped my arm, her eyes wide and wet. "Did he just—" she whispered, her words trembling. I nodded, unable to speak. My son, the boy who always clung to us, who always dragged us into his mess, was finally letting go, and the weight of it crushed me in ways I didn't expect. When we met him later in the holding room, the glass between us made everything feel colder. He picked up the phone, his hands trembling slightly. His eyes found mine, and for once, he didn't look defiant. He looked resolved. "If I stay here," he said softly, "they'll drag me back. You know they will." I pressed the phone tighter against my ear, my voice raw. "Where will you go?" He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Out of state. Rehab. A clean start. Somewhere Ava can visit when I'm ready. But until then, she's yours." The words split me open. I wanted to shout at him for abandoning her. And yet, for the first time, it felt like he was making an adult decision. Linda sobbed on the other side, clutching the phone with both hands. "You're her father," she cried. "She needs you." Tyler shook his head slowly, his eyes glistening. "Not like this, Mom. Not until I'm someone she can be proud of." His voice cracked, and my chest heaved as if the air had been stolen. The silence after those words stretched heavy between us. I stared at him, trying to memorize his face through the glass, as if I might lose him forever. He was broken, yes, but for the first time, I saw a man willing to break himself further in order to rebuild. "Promise me you'll keep her safe," he whispered, his hand pressing against the glass. Linda pressed her palm against his, tears streaming down her face. I couldn't move at first, but then I raised my hand too. 3 hands, divided by glass, united by blood. If you've ever had to let go of someone you love to save them, you know the agony of that moment. Tell me, would you hold on tighter, or would you let them walk away? When we left the courthouse that day, Ava was waiting at home. She ran into Linda's arms, her tiny legs wrapping around her waist. "Where's Daddy?" she asked, her voice sweet and innocent. Linda's tears returned instantly, her body shaking as she held the girl close. I knelt down, my throat burning. "Daddy's getting better," I told her. "He asked us to take care of you until he's ready." Her eyes searched mine, too wise for her years, but she nodded slowly. "Okay, Grandpa. I'll wait." That night, Ava slept between us in our bed, her small body curled like a comma against Linda's chest. I stared at the ceiling for hours, the dark pressing in, Tyler's words replaying over and over. "Keep Ava until I'm clean." Each repetition was both a wound and a balm. The house felt different, quieter, heavier. Every creak in the floorboards reminded me of him, of his laughter as a boy, of his slammed doors as a teen, of his broken promises as a man. And now it echoed with his absence. Linda whispered in the dark, her voice fragile. "Do you believe him?" I turned my head, watching Ava's steady breathing, the rise and fall of her chest. "For the first time," I whispered back, "I think I do." Morning light spilled across the room, gentle and cruel. Ava stirred, her bear clutched tight. "Can we call Daddy today?" she asked, her eyes hopeful. My heart clenched. "Not today," I said softly, "but soon." The lie tasted like ash, but I couldn't crush her hope. The days blurred after that. Court hearings, meetings with social workers, Ava's school runs. Life reshaped itself around us, fragile but steady. Linda grew stronger in ways I'd never seen. She became both grandmother and mother, her love fierce and unyielding. One afternoon, I found Ava in the yard, kicking a ball alone. She stopped, looked up at me, and said, "I'll show Daddy when he's better." The innocence in her smile cracked me open. For the first time in years, I let myself cry where she could see me. She ran to me, wrapping her arms around my leg. "It's okay, Grandpa. We'll wait together." The betrayal still burned, but something else took root in me. Faith. Not blind faith, not naive trust, but faith in the possibility of change. Faith that maybe this time Tyler meant what he said. Nights were the hardest. Linda and I would sit in silence, sometimes holding hands, sometimes just staring at the empty chair where Tyler once sat. The house missed him, even after all he'd done. But it also felt safer, steadier, for Ava's sake. Weeks later, a letter arrived from the rehab center. Tyler's handwriting scrawled across the page, uneven but determined. "Tell Ava I love her. Tell her I'm learning how to be the dad she deserves." Linda sobbed as she read it aloud, clutching the paper like a lifeline. I folded the letter carefully, sliding it into a drawer with the others. A growing stack of promises, this time written instead of spoken. Maybe they would hold. Maybe they wouldn't. But at least they were his, not borrowed from us. If you've ever prayed for someone to change, you know the fear that follows hope. You know the ache of waiting. Comment below. Would you believe in him, or would you prepare for disappointment? The seasons shifted slowly. Ava's laughter filled the house again, a sound I thought we might never hear. Linda planted flowers in the yard, her hands busy, her heart healing. I sat on the porch, watching, listening, waiting. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Ava asked me, "Will Daddy come home soon?" I looked at her, the golden light catching her hair, and I felt something new. Not fear, not rage, something softer. "Yes," I said quietly, "but not the same Daddy you remember. A better one." She smiled, satisfied, and skipped away, her bear swinging from her arm. And for the first time in years, I realized I wasn't lying. I believed it. Because in that courtroom, in that holding room, I had seen something I thought was gone forever. A choice. A man standing at the edge of ruin, finally choosing to climb instead of fall. And for the first time, I believed my son. Months later, the house no longer echoed with fear. It breathed. Ava's laughter spilled through the walls again, light and unbroken, like sunlight after a storm. She kicked her soccer ball across the yard, her small legs pumping, her voice calling out, "Grandpa, watch this." And for the first time in years, I didn't flinch at the sound of joy. I let it wash over me. Linda sat on the porch steps, her hands resting on her knees, eyes fixed on the girl. She smiled, not the forced smile of survival, but the kind that came from somewhere deeper. Her hair glowed in the late afternoon light, silver strands catching fire against the sun. She turned to me and whispered, "She's safe. That's all that matters." The bag, the cursed gray gym bag, was gone now, locked away in evidence, sealed in the past. Yet sometimes I could still feel its weight, pressing on my chest like a ghost. Every time I saw Ava's stuffed bear, the one she clutched that night, I remembered the bag's zipper, the bricks, the gun. One object almost destroyed us. The other saved us. Letters arrived from Tyler, each one steadier than the last. The early ones were messy, broken, full of apologies. But as the months passed, his words shifted. They spoke of routine, of therapy, of working construction jobs at the rehab center. "I'm learning how to build," he wrote. "Not just walls, Dad. A life." I read them aloud at the kitchen table, my voice tight, Linda's eyes always wet. Ava kept every postcard he sent. She pinned them above her bed, little squares of color from places he'd been taken on outings. Mountains, rivers, a field of sunflowers. She'd point to them at night and whisper, "That's where Daddy's getting better." Her faith was stronger than mine, purer, untouched by betrayal. One Saturday morning, she ran onto the soccer field in her new uniform. The whistle blew, and she darted forward, legs fast, hair streaming. Linda clapped, tears spilling as if each kick was a miracle. I stood silent, hands gripping the fence, my throat tight, because it was a miracle. She was here. She was smiling. She was free. Later that night, a letter came addressed just to me. Tyler's handwriting steadier than I'd ever seen. "Dad," it read, "I know I burned every bridge. I know I made you carry things you should never have carried. But I want you to know, The line you drew, the one I hated you for, it saved us. It saved Ava. And maybe it saved me too. I read those words over and over, my vision blurring. For so long I thought saying no to him was the moment I lost my son. But maybe, just maybe, it was the moment I gave him a chance to find himself. The line that nearly destroyed us had become the one that saved us. That night, Linda rested her head on my shoulder, Ava asleep between us. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels earned, the kind you hold onto with both hands. I closed my eyes, listening to the soft rhythm of their breaths, and let peace settle into me for the first time in years. Sometimes I still wake in the dark, heart pounding, hearing echoes of sirens, of Tyler's fists against glass. But now, when the fear comes, I walk to Ava's room. I watch her sleeping, her stuffed bear curled under her arm, postcards above her bed, and the fear fades. Because the storm has passed. Months turned into a year. Ava grew taller, her voice louder, her smile wider. She called me from the yard one day, holding a dandelion in her hand. "Make a wish, Grandpa," she said. I closed my eyes, the stem warm between my fingers. I wished not for riches, not for ease, just for this, to keep her safe. If you've ever faced the choice of letting go to protect someone you love, you know it's not weakness, it's strength. Comment below. What would you have done differently? Would you have drawn the line? Tyler called on a Sunday. His voice sounded different, clearer, stronger. He talked about work, about meetings, about maybe moving to a small town out of state. "It's not much," he said, "but it's mine, and it's steady." I listened, and for once, I didn't hear lies. I heard a man learning to live. Ava jumped when she heard his voice, her eyes lighting up. "Daddy!" she shouted into the phone, her smile so wide it hurt to look at. Tyler's silence on the other end was thick with emotion. "Hi, Princess," he finally whispered. His voice cracked, but it was real. After the call, Ava curled in Linda's lap, babbling about showing her soccer moves to Daddy one day. Linda stroked her hair, her eyes shining with quiet hope. I stood in the doorway, my chest heavy, but not with pain, with something gentler, something like forgiveness. The past didn't vanish. It never would. The betrayal, the lies, the night of the arrest, they stayed etched in me, but they no longer defined us. They were scars, not open wounds, and scars meant survival. I went out to the porch that evening, the sun sinking low, the sky painted in gold. I sat there listening to Ava's laughter drift through the screen door, soft and sweet, the kind of sound that makes you believe in second chances. The line I drew had nearly cost me my son, but in the end, it saved my granddaughter, and maybe, in time, it saved him too. That truth sat with me, steady and unshakable. Sometimes love isn't about opening the door. Sometimes it's about closing it, even when your heart breaks in two. Closing it to keep a child safe inside, to give them a chance at something better. So when I look back at that bag, the one that nearly destroyed us, I don't see only pain anymore. I see the moment everything changed. The line that tore us apart was the line that rebuilt us. And in the quiet of that final night, with Ava asleep and Linda's hand in mine, I whispered to myself, we survived. And this time, it wasn't a hope. It was the truth. What did you think of this ending? Would you have chosen differently? Tell me in the comments below.